Okay, Liaquat Ali Khan, Pakistan and the Modern World. You see, Pakistan and the Modern World by Liaquat Ali Khan. In conferring a degree upon me, you and the University of Kansas City have bestowed upon me and my country an honor for which I cannot adequately thank you. For my address today, I have admirably chosen the subject of Pakistan and the modern world. I have done this for two reasons. In the first place, I am conscious of the fact that you have been kind enough to select me as the recipient of your recognition in order to do honor to my country rather than to reward me for my inadequate merits. It is fitting, therefore, that in expressing gratitude for your generosity, my country, more than myself, should speak to you on this occasion. In the second place, we live today in an era of widening horizons. It is, in a sense, an era in which new countries are being discovered. More than 4 centuries ago, great explorers from Europe, voyaging out to discover the continent from which I hail, discovered your great land. You, with your growing interest in the affairs of the world, are poised in a moment of history when you cannot but carry that voice forward. If I may be permitted to say so, that discovery of Asia has not yet been accomplished. In fact, it has only just begun. In speaking to you today, I trust I shall be of some assistance to you in discovering a part of Asia which I know well and which is very dear to me, and in pointing out some of the links that destiny is forging between your people and ours. Pakistan is a new state, to be more exact, a new democracy. As a democracy, it is not yet 3 years old. There was a time when your country, where the traditions of civil liberty, freedom, and democracy have now taken such firm root, was new and young democracy, and the memory of your struggle for independence was yet fresh in the minds of men. If you can, in your imagination, reconstruct those times for a little while, you will in many ways be reading the history of Pakistan and the first 3 years of its new life. Till 3 years ago, Pakistan was only an idea and a longing. In the vast subcontinent where present day Bharat and Pakistan are situated, and where British held sway, there lived 100 million Muslims who for centuries made this part of the world their homeland. They lived side by side with the 300 million others, mostly Hindus, who had come to this continent in an earlier era. As a day of freedom to these 400 million people drew near, it became increasingly obvious that at the end of the British rule, the 100 million Muslims would have to live their new life as a perpetual political minority. Long experience and the history of several centuries had taught them that under a dominating majority of 3 to 1, freedom from British rule would mean to the Muslims not freedom, but merely a change of masters. It was not merely a question of religious differences, as that phrase is generally understood. It was not merely whereas the Muslims were monotheists, the Hindus were polytheists, or that the Muslims believed in the Prophet of Arabia and in Christ and the prophets of the Old Testament. whereas the Hindus did not. The differences were even more pervasive than this and created a maladjustment between the two peoples in almost every situation of their daily lives. The Hindus believed in a caste system which made it a sin for those at the top of the hierarchy to eat with the so-called lower human beings, or in some cases, even to touch them. The Muslims believed in the equality of all men, regarding even priesthood as unnecessary and a negation of the bond which exists between God and each of his creatures. Their economic outlooks were also very different. The Muslims believed in the right of private ownership for everyone, whether man or woman, and had laws of inheritance and economic institutions, which, unlike those of the Hindus, were designed to promote the distribution of wealth and discourage vast unearned accumulations. But since the Hindus were much larger in number, the Muslims feared that under their domination, the culture of the Muslims would suffer a great setback and would perhaps be totally eclipsed. Furthermore, in a country which was on the whole backward, the Muslims economically and industrially were even more backward. It seemed certain to them that as an unalterable and perpetual minority, their economic positions would grow even worse. Thus, the Muslims in that part of the world, freedom from British rule meant practically nothing unless it meant freedom from the domination of the Hindu majority also. It was for these reasons that they asked for a country of their own. The demand was not so unreasonable as it was made out to be by some people at the time. The subcontinent was vast enough for two larger countries. The Muslims were numerous enough to constitute a nation, bigger than most nations in the world, and in the subcontinent, there were large enough areas where they were in majority. It is these areas that were separated and today form the independent sovereign state of Pakistan. We believed then, and we believe, and and we believe none that the demand of the Muslims in British India to have a separate state of their own was, both on human and geopolitical grounds, a very reasonable demand. To millions of Muslims, it meant the only opportunity for genuine freedom and genuine self-government. To millions of Hindus, it gave the same opportunity for developing their own culture untrampled by the constant discontent of a large and unmanageable minority. From the point of view of world peace, the creation of two independent and comparatively homogeneous states instead of a single uneasy and unwieldy state with great strains and stresses within the body politic was the greatest contribution that could be made towards the creation of a stable new Asia. These loving men and women who today lament the strained relations between Pakistan and Bharat, and none laments them more than we do, should at least have this consolation that had Pakistan not been separated from the rest of British India, far more serious and dangerous cracks would have appeared in that subcontinent, resulting in untold upheavals. Potentially, and therefore, the creation of Pakistan has by itself dissolved what would have been a perpetual danger zone in Asia. But it has done more than that. Cast your mind on all the countries of Asia and one of Asia, one after another, almost everywhere you will see intense nationalism, great backwardness, impatience with colonial rule, and in some greater or lesser degree of democratic rule. But in many of them, you will also see internal strains, moral doubts, ideological conflicts, waverings, hesitations, and confusions. Halting democracies and ideological confusions create great anxieties for the government in Asia, for the people of Asia, and for peace-loving and world-minded people anywhere. In the midst of these, Pakistan stands unified. It stands unified because its people are free from mental confusions which elsewhere create disruption and cast menacing shadows on the future. They have chosen for themselves the path chalked out for them by their simple, practical, clear-cut beliefs and decisions. Foremost amongst those beliefs are the belief in the supreme sovereignty of God, belief in the equality of man, belief in democracy, and the right of the people to be governed by their own freely chosen representatives, belief in individual destiny, in the fundamental freedoms of every single man and woman, in the right of every individual to the fruit of his own honest effort, belief in the sanctity of the human life and the human liberty, belief in the sanctity of home, belief in survival, in a belief in universal peace, but an equally strong belief in resisting aggression, tyranny, and exploitation. We did not have to acquire or inculcate these beliefs after the foundation of our new state. On the contrary, we found a new state because we wanted to practice these beliefs without being inhibited by the contiguity and without being thwarted by the domination of other conflicting way of life. For us to be undemocratic or to ignore individual rights, whether of property, belief, or expression, or to bend our knee to aggression is to destroy completely the very ideals which inspired us in our demand for Pakistan. This intensity of purpose and this firm faith have during the last 3 years been demonstrated in ways which surprises our critics and our friends, and in some ways went beyond our own expectations. When British India was partitioned, we, the Pakistanis, were asked to set up a new state of 80 million people within a period of 2 months. We had no capital or no flag. Our administrative machinery had to be built up from scratch. We were allotted an army, but its personnel was dispersed far and wide and could not come together for months. We had no military equipment. Our share of the military equipment of British India, which was allotted to us on paper, remains largely undelivered even today, when 3 years have elapsed. Being a backward people, we had no industry, no engineers, and practically no traders. Within a few months of independence, 7 million homeless refugees driven out of India came over to us in a miserable plight to seek shelter. Had it not been for the unity of our people, we might have floundered. But today, after 3 years, we are stronger than before. And in spite of some very anxious moments, when our international rights and our freedom seemed to be in jeopardy, we are still free. What are the demands that our freedom makes on us? Our first duty is to ourselves. I do not say this in any spirit of selfishness or chauvinism. Our free people must maintain their own freedom first. Otherwise, they disgrace their name of free men and women all over the world. But the maintenance of freedom requires constant vigilance. Liberty does not descend upon a people. A people must raise themselves to it. It is a fruit that must be earned before it is enjoyed. That freedom means the freedom only from foreign domination is an outworn idea. It is not merely governments that should be free, but the people themselves who should be free. And no freedom has any real value of the common for the common man or woman unless it also means freedom from want, freedom from disease, freedom from ignorance. This is the main task which confronts us if we are to take our rightful place in the modern world. We cannot hold the clock back, and therefore it is we who must go forward at a double pace, bending all our resources and all our energies to this great purpose. Students of history are aware that during the last 2 or 3 centuries of foreign domination, our people have not kept pace with the march of civilization. It was during these centuries that Western civilization, of which you are the proud torch bearers, discovered a use of science, which though not new, was so fast in tempo that and so vast in its magnitude that it gave civilization a new orientation altogether. This is the phase that, for various reasons, our people missed. The result is that today we find multitudes emerging as large free nations in Asia with their material and mental resources utterly undeveloped and with their standards of living so low that the world conscience should not be content leave, to leave them stagnant. Our ancient steadfast faith, which is such a source of strength to us on the ideological front in these modern uneasy times, must be bettered to the pioneering virility of modern technology. This is the synthesis we must achieve quickly, not merely for the sake of progress, but for the sake of world peace itself. For I sincerely believe that war and peace and progress and prosperity are all indivisible today. The innumerable millions of Asia Heads of ancient cultures and ancient civilizations have, after centuries of suppression, entered upon a new and dynamic phase of nationalism. Most of them were accustomed to looking at the West from the position of subject people and could see a little beyond the less attractive side of what they see, what to them was Western civilization. Their newly win freedom has, however, corrected their vision, and they are better able to see both the Western world and their own surroundings in their true perspective. While on the one hand, they are filled with admiration at the sight of the progress and advancement of civilization in such great countries as the United States of America. They are more impatient than even before with their own misery and backwardness and are keenly searching the horizon for the signs of a bright day. They are actually aware of the great contrast between their own standard of living and the standards of living in the Western world. This disequilibrium is in many ways most disquieting and has in it the seed of unpredictable upheavals for the sake of world peace, for the sake of world civilization. Asia must be made stable, but it cannot be made stable unless discontent is removed and the terms of disruption are killed by better and cleaner living, which means no more or no less than enabling the people of Asia to enjoy the fullest advantages of freedom and democracy. In this situation, now we consider the role of Pakistan and to be that of a stabilizing factor in a backward and discontented part of the world. We hope to be able to play this role successfully by our strong faith in God, in democracy, and in our own unity by the resources of our land and waters, and by our will to work on these points. Pakistan stands firm. What, however, is the role of the Western world in this situation? It is to demonstrate the to democracy instead democracy that true democracy is international in its very conception and does not shirk its responsibility for the maintenance of world peace, that it discharges this responsibility by defying not only this or that particular aggressor, but aggression everywhere, and that it has a constructive and not merely a defiant outlook. We conceive the role of the Western world to be the enlightened one of sharing its great fund of knowledge, skill, and experience with those who were denied their opportunities, but who constitute a major part of the world's population and without whose progress the world will limp along only on one leg, if at all. I have met many liberal-minded and thoughtful men in your country, to whom these are the only aims worth pursuing in the domain of international affairs today. I'm certain, therefore, that the majority of your people regard the emergence of the democracy of Pakistan, its progress and future development as of great importance in Asia, and they are convinced that Pakistan's strength will be a happy augury for peace. An American statesman pointed out the other day the great similarity of the beginning of Pakistan with the early days of America, of how America began mainly as an agricultural country, just as Pakistan is today, and of how both struggled successfully to free themselves of foreign rule. As your belief in individual enterprise and in civil liberties has led you to great heights, both as a productive and as a democratic country. So we hope that our country too, by following the same path and by believing in moral values, will shorten the period between its emergence as a peaceful, stable democracy and its emergence as a progress state, prosperous state, in order that our cooperation with the peace-loving nations of the world, which we are most desirous to promote, should have weight and substance, and which should be enabled by preserving our liberty and by uplifting the masses to make our full contribution to the security and happiness of mankind. May I leave this thought with you today, this and the heartful gratitude of one whom you have honored as a servant of a democratic and determined people. By your generous gesture of kindness and esteem, you have almost relieved me of the pleasant task which I came here to perform, namely, to bring Pakistan and the United States of America closer together in the name of humanity and world peace.